Hello, everyone. Welcome to our planet.
Good morning. Thanks for moderating and hosting, Vani.
Thank you. I'm just going to do a quick check, making sure that we are also live on Twitter.
FutureSightE, so excited you're here. So excited for this demo. Thank you for
Thank
doing
you.
this with us.
No, I appreciate it. It'll be interesting, I think, for everybody.
Absolutely. I'm so excited. I have a lot to learn from you on this. I've been messing around with ChatGPT and DALL-E and Midjourney and all the different tools for a while now, but have not managed to do anything anywhere close to how incredible you have been creating lately. So
Well,
I'm
thank you.
excited for
It's
you to
it's funny.
share.
It's the process is relatively simple, but it's about, I guess, being patient enough to make sure that everything is in the right place and balanced properly. Because, as you know, it can very quickly go off into areas that are a bit
400
unhelpful.
teeth, 400
Yeah,
teeth and
exactly.
15
Hey,
fingers. Yeah, totally.
a lot of patience is required, even though the tools are quite simple to use.
Well, I'm excited for everyone to learn from you. I'm so excited that we're recording this too, so we can use it and share for future reference for folks. I'm just grateful. I know it's difficult for you time wise because we're all across the world, so I appreciate you making time for our morning over here.
No, it works relatively well. I'm in the EU, so it's not too bad actually.
So we are officially live also on Twitter, and I think we can get started. What do you think, Charles?
Yeah, let's go ahead and get started. Like I
Okay,
said, we'll
well,
record this and people can watch it at any time, and hopefully it'll be a great reference point for future education too. So awesome.
okay, so welcome everyone to another session of our Planet Life. So each week we bring a variety of topics from market news and takes to community news and announcements for our founders to having these educational sessions with community members and thought leaders. So today is a really extra special one because we have seen the rise of AI in the past months, and it's still the hottest topic around. And though there may be some controversy with AI, I think for the most part, many of us here are curious and want to explore this technology that has been here for a while, but now it's finally democratized. We can all access it. And we have FutureSightE leading us through his creative process. So, welcome, FutureSightE. I don't know if I'm pronouncing, is it Sight?
Future Sight, yes. I mean, it's just one of those names. Eternal Phoenix on Discord, Future Sight on Twitter, other names in other worlds and other places. So it's all part of the fun of all. And we can wear many different hats and many different masks. It's part of the new world we live in.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Thanks for bringing us all together. I'm so excited for this session.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I kind of come from an anthropology background and cultural heritage. So I've always been fascinated with humanity and how human society functions. And in particular, the anthropology of religion was always a kind of strong interest for me. And that then developed into wanting to kind of convert that into real world professional applications. So I went and did a master's degree in cultural heritage and museum studies. And then actually spent about a decade working for faith-based organizations on various kinds of finance and economic justice campaigning, events, reports, all of those kind of thought leadership things, looking at alternatives to the status quo. This was all kind of post-financial crisis in 2008. So it was a big ticket to really discuss how is our modern form of capitalism working, or as the case may be, not working, and how can we make it both more inclusive, more sustainable, and ultimately more egalitarian and making sure that it's working for everybody and not just the people at the very top. How effective all of that campaigning was, 10, 15 years later, I'm not so sure, but I like to think that we at least were having the right kinds of conversations, reaching the right kinds of people. And a lot of that did involve things like running events, online discussions, video editing, all of that kind of stuff. So those kind of technical skills started to develop a little bit. And then I spent a bit of time as head of operations for a medium-sized museum. And that, again, involved a bit of things to do with website development, audio-visual development, more at a managerial level, but still kind of getting in there in the process and learning a few tricks along the way. So this kind of technical process is something I've got some familiarity with. I know my way around Photoshop and Adobe Premiere, and a bit later I'll kind of point out where that comes in handy, but it's not something I am artistically talented. It's not something that I consider myself to be able to, put pen to paper or to tablet or whatever and come up with something as amazing as we can today. So my background was really in those kind of areas around social commentary, social justice, which did involve a little bit about technology as well. But now veering into a real deep interest in AI and the impact it can have, not just creatively, but economically and even spiritually and philosophically. There's a lot of stuff coming down the line that we're going to have to grapple with. And that really, when I started getting more involved in Web3 and seeing these kinds of tools come to the surface, that's when I realized that I could be a more of an active participant in Web3 and particularly projects like Our Planet, and actually use these tools to help start creating narratives rather than just kind of passively receiving them or waiting for them to happen around me. I started realizing, well, hold on, now we've got the tools that we can start developing all of this stuff, and relatively easily. I mean, there's a nuance to it, but it's, as you said, more accessible than ever, really. So I dove in for the last probably 3 months now and have learned a few tricks along the way, and also learned how quickly everything's changing. So it's just interesting to be aware of what's going on and start using it, even if you don't feel you're getting good results, because 6 months from now, you can bet there's going to be a whole host of new things, and you just kind of need to be on top of what's going on. So that's my basic background and why I'm both here, and also why I started delving more into the AI generation side of things.
Oh, we absolutely share so many values and sort of long-term vision. I think you've become this creative through AI, so I'm so excited for you to share everyone on the process for it.
I wanted to hand you the mic because I know you're a big advocate for AI and have really interesting takes. So take it away.
I think I've always been in emerging tech from a background and expertise perspective, and FutureSightE will have to talk at some point offline too, because in another life, I was a studio artist that was going to work in galleries from an art history perspective. So we'll have lots to chat on another time. But I actually spent some time a few years ago working on an AI project called Lunch Club, which is a super connector, basically using AI to thread the needle of the people that you should have met to further your professional development. And we connected people all over the world. Incredible new businesses, stories, friendships that came out of that and continues to come out of it. It's called Lunch Club. I still advise them a little bit and love the platform and the team deeply. But really got exposed to AI then and its power for good or for evil. And ChatGPT has actually been around for a bit. It's just now public facing. So like AI, like Jasper AI, for example, which is used for businesses to create advertising content, was built on ChatGPT a few years ago. It's now a unicorn. It's here in Austin, close to that team too. But ChatGPT has been growing like crazy. I mean, that's why it's taken the world by storm, right? Over 100 million users by January already. That's the fastest product market fit I've ever seen personally. And I believe OpenAI has projected revenues of 200 million this year and then a billion by 2024. So a lot of opportunity from a new wealth creation perspective. And in my opinion, blockchain turns everyone into an investor, whether they know it or not. And AI really turns everyone into a creator or a builder. And so, like anything, AI is a tool. If we're comparing it to the hammer or the wheel, it just depends on how we shape it and how we use it as humankind. A hammer in someone's hand can be a tool or it can be a weapon. So it has to be trained collaboratively with all of us in mind. And it's going to require us to think critically and train AI and use AI with human values and empathy in mind. From a creative automation perspective, we can think about it two ways. We can think about it as something to be fearful of from a job displacement or creative displacement perspective, or we can think of it as a tool that augments and enhances human creativity. Like you said, FutureSightE, you have a little bit of background in creativity, in creative in general production, but now you are creating incredible 3D animated voiceover content. And I'm sure you never imagined that you would be creating that. So it gives equal access from a creative generation perspective. And it allows more people to be creative in ways that they didn't think were possible. And in my opinion, it also frees up creatives to generate new ideas, to move faster, to automate certain tasks that take a lot of time. Should really give creative superpowers. But of course, there's always concerns on either side. A book I highly recommend and talk about nonstop and bought for Rane and will buy for anyone else who wants it is AI 2041. Yeah, you have it too. I love it. And it is by Kai-Fu Lee and Chen Guifan or Stan. And Kai-Fu Lee was the president of Google China and had a big role in developing AI out of that department. Super intelligent human and leader. And then Stan is an incredible, world-renowned storyteller, and hopefully we'll introduce everyone to him pretty soon here. But I love that book specifically because it takes what is likely to happen from an AI perspective based on the expertise that Kai-Fu Lee and his teams have in the past in terms of projecting what's likely to happen in the next 20 years from a 30 years from a AI perspective. And then Stan helps storytell around what does that mean for us from a human and ethics perspective. So big fan of that book. Shout out to Stan, and hopefully we'll all be able to chat about the sort of long-term vision here. But I'm so excited for FutureSightE to talk us through the actual creative and how we can all use AI to give ourselves superpowers. I will stop talking unless there are any questions.
No, I absolutely love your insights and takes about AI. I think I shared this with you earlier where I was a little bit on the hesitant side and I'm like, what does this mean for me? And I was just going through this like rabbit hole and I've been able to see a lot of good and I cannot wait to see what future site is like has been creating. So I think we'll hand it over, but actually, right before that, I want to just do like a little action item or call to action for everyone tuning in. Just like drop your comments inside of the Twitter live thread. Just what are your overall thoughts? Like, give us with emojis or just like share us your thoughts about how you've been using AI, if you have been using it, and then we can have a conversation when we are complete. But I'll hand over now the mic for you to screen share FutureSightE.
Well, thank you very much. And Chelsea, look, I completely agree. It's an interesting journey coming from being quite concerned about the existential
Yes.
threats of AI, and there are legitimate things to be
Totally.
concerned about, and spending quite a lot of time thinking about the ethical implications of it, which again are incredibly important to deeply consider.
Yeah.
But it's very, very clear that this is happening and it's happening now. And indeed, just listening to people like Sam Altman, who's the CEO of OpenAI, who are of course, the creators of ChatGPT, And hearing him give talks recently where they're essentially saying that they are consciously throttling the release of these technologies because they understand how monumental the social shift is going to be, and they want the rest of the world to catch up to the idea of what's coming. And as much as we may want to kind of put the brakes on that, you can't. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. You can't close Pandora's box. This is here. And so we do need to, those of us who, as you say in our planet, are conscious hustlers, we need to be actively involved in this new emerging landscape, because it can be used for good, it can be used for productivity, and is being used. And it's important to be part of that conversation to help steer some of the ethical sides of it as well, because the more of us who put our energy into using these things in positive manners, the more that companies are incentivized to go that direction, the more that these conversations are ensuring that we have a better chance of coming out of this in a utopian rather than a dystopian outcome. And I'm a big believer that the 20th century was filled with visions of dystopia. And unfortunately, it seems that as much as we talked about them, they all seem to come true regardless. And so for me, there is something about actually putting into place visions of utopia, visions of how these things can be used well.
Great.
So that we're actually giving energy to those visions of where this can go. So that was a kind of a bit of a pre-see. Let me just share my screen. Now I'm just hoping that I don't end up in some kind of endless recursion. I will try to do this bit by bit. You might just have to bear with me. So for those of you who didn't, may not have seen what people like Vane and Chelsea are talking about, can you see this folder at the moment? I essentially had some videos coming up with an AI called Chimea. And this resulted from, now if I open up this, I'm hoping, does that share, or do I need to switch my screen sharing? I probably need to switch it again. Just bear with me. Because I've got quite a few different things here. So I'm going to open up my entire screen, excuse a bit of the recursion, and I will close that and we'll start looking at things piece by piece. So this is an isolated version of the tokens that we all know from our planet. This is one of my favorite ones that I own. And when I was looking at ways to kind of start creating lore around these tokens, to start fleshing out what it means for these things to have a character behind it and storytelling, which obviously the project has been encouraging us to do. Things like Midjourney and DALL-E and other things were starting to become very popular at the end of last year. And so that's when I started throwing in things like these tokens into Midjourney and starting to create a bit of a sense of this character, this character that ended up being a kind of a baroness, noble woman type figure, but who had come to the realization, of course, that for all the wealth and power and status that she might have, she needed to find a new way of being, because life on her planet was suffering from a lot of the kind of climate change and economic devastation or overuse, overexploitation that we might be concerned about here. And I started to get this sense of somebody who had seen things go wrong on her planet and then was trying to come to ours to talk to us. Now, obviously, Midjourney is a very kind of impressive thing when you first start using it, but equally, imagery is just one step of storytelling. And from that kind of seed of storytelling, I started to see more discussion about how you can use Midjourney and utilize it alongside things like ChatGPT, although I use different platforms as we'll discuss, and then animation generation platforms, to start to really combine everything into something that can be quite compelling. And even if it's compelling just because it's novel at the moment, you don't actually see many people in Web3 using this kind of technology, particularly not just average users like me, who's, talking about the projects we love and why we love them, and we love the art, and the art here is incredible. So why not see how we can kind of evolve it? And you do kind of quickly start to realize a few things. Let me show you the end result first, and then we'll have a look at some of how we got there, because the end result is, I think, and others
Greetings from a
agree, is something that actually does start to bring this to life. Now, I hope you can hear the audio in this, but if you can you hear the audio, Vane?
Yes, we can.
From the video itself, you can. Okay, great. So I'm going to play this if you haven't seen it, just so you get a sense of where we kind of ended up, and then I'll show you how I've tweaked it from there.
Greetings from a fellow wanderer. My name is Kai Mia, and I'm here from our planet to find people who want to make your world better. Every action we take has a consequence. By being mindful of this, we can ensure we are making positive contributions to the world. The best way to be more aware of the consequences of your decisions is to ask yourself, how will this benefit or harm others, the environment, and future generations? We must use our collective power to make a difference. We can start by spreading the word and inspiring others to join us in this effort. Let's start now. Greetings from a fellow wanderer.
Now, you can see that there's quite a lot going on here. So you've got an image, and that image that we're looking at now was created by feeding this initial token image into Midjourney, and you can ask Midjourney to use a specific image that you feed it as the kind of basis for what it's creating. And importantly, I'm going to throw in a few little tips here and there. You got to make sure to get rid of the hands, because as we well know, AI doesn't really enjoy, or isn't exactly adept at using things like hands at the moment. And so by getting rid of the hands, you're just kind of making it easier for something like Midjourney to give you the results you want. Now, from there, I ended up with a lot of different potential images, and we can look into some of them in a bit. But you've got your image, you've then got a text or a script. And in this case, I've had a few people ask me, did you write these things? And the answer is that these things were actually created with the help of AI. And so 95% of the words that are spoken are AI generated. And I'll show you a little bit. There's a lot of leading questions involved in getting there, of course. But I thought it was important for these videos not just to be a kind of a doll that I was putting words into its mouth, but to really start to train and use an AI character that could, in some ways, kind of have a conversation with us, coming from elsewhere, as this character Chimera does, about the problems and challenges that we face. So you've got your text and your script, you've then got the audio, you've got the speech, and there's a number of different platforms out there, and we'll look at one that's often used. And then, of course, all of this is animated and put together. And this is the kind of, what I would say is, with this video here, this is what you can do with the platforms as they present it. I'll then show you how later I've been slightly tweaking things a little bit with the use of Photoshop and Adobe Premiere. But what you see with this video is something that literally anybody can do. It does require a number of different platforms, and some of those require credits to use. You'll quickly run out of your free credits, although you can try all of these things, this whole process, for free. So I recommend certainly giving it a go. But it's not that expensive. The whole thing, including Midjourney, the kind of character AIs, the audio generation, the animations, all of that, you're looking at something around $15 to $20 a month to generate a pretty substantial amount of content. Now, for anybody who's tried generating things with AI, you'll know that iteration is key, and you end up having to throw a lot of variations at things. So you do run out of credits, but it's not prohibitively expensive, let's say. Now, how do we get things like, like the character AI? Let's kind of start there. I'm not going to take you through Midjourney. I think a lot of people are used to the concept of what AI art generative prompts are doing. What I would obviously say is that with these kinds of platforms and the way they're generating the animation, what you really need is something that's front facing, and you need something that has quite a bit of clarity around the face and the character itself. And that can take quite a lot of iteration. Obviously, I'll show you what happens in a bit when we use things that are not front facing, and you'll see why we do this. But there's a couple of different platforms people use. If you look up things like there's a lot of YouTube tutorials on this. So I recommend, if you want to look up on YouTube how to animate an AI character, you'll find variations of this recipe all over if you want to follow things. And most of them will use ChatGPT to generate a text, or they'll create their own script. I wanted to have something with a bit more character to it, and that could kind of operate across a range of content that was going to be produced. And I settled at the moment on two platforms. One's called InWorld, which you'll see here. And this InWorld is really a platform that's designed to create NPC characters for video games. And you can see alongside here, they're kind of stock characters, Game Master, Galadriel, and things like that, which come as their base examples. And by kind of creating a character in here, putting in a basic description of who they are and what motivates them, these kind of platforms then enable you to use sliders in many ways to kind of decide upon a bit of a personality. Are they cautious or open? Are they aggressive or peaceful? Are they happy or sad? Are they angry or fearful? All these kinds of things start to have a bit of an impact on the results that you might get. Now, when you chat with these, and they do tend to remember what you're discussing, although there are limitations to that over time, as I started to find out. And you can ask, for this, I would say something like, what are the main challenges that humanity faces today? You can see how you start to get answers and a text out of these AI characters. And the more you chat with them, the more they start to develop their own kind of, not personalities as such, but they start to be led down particular avenues, and their answers become more and more consistent. Now, we would anthropomorphize that as a personality, but it is important from an ethical perspective to know that these are language-based models and it's not necessarily a personality coming out. However, you can see how we're getting a script, and this script is emerging from these vast data sets, feeding in all the kind of information that it can gather off of the internet. And that essentially what you're doing here is you're tapping into that kind of collective unconscious of humanity and saying, well, where all of this data is now, what is the collective answer to this kind of question? And I think that is an interesting philosophical approach to take, rather than just writing a script and putting my personal opinion in there. You get results that you may not necessarily expect, and I think that gives it a bit more personality, and just it makes it a bit more of a compelling thing. There are other AI character platforms. Another one, Character AI, is something I'm using as well, which has a bit more what are the main challenges facing humanity today? I found Character AI has more of a memory between your discussions. The character here does respond over time, and it's a bit easier to train a character. Although the answers, because it's not designed to be a character in a video game, quote unquote, the answers can be a bit more kind of bland in a way. It's also generating images there. I've asked it, which sometimes is a hit. This time is obviously a miss. But you can see how you can work with these AI training platforms to create your character. And I think, for me anyway, that's quite an important step of this, because it starts to allow the storytelling to have a bit of a life of its own. You're not just animating your own script. The script itself is being generated. Now, with these kinds of scripts, you then need to turn it into audio and speech. And there are most video platforms, and we'll have a look at DID, which is the one that's used most often. Most of them do allow you to generate the audio at the same time as the video. But I've found of the 3 or 4 that I tried, all of the audio generation is pretty rubbish, to be honest. So one of the kind of leaders in this area is a platform called 11 Labs. And they are always the one recommended, and I would recommend them as well, because they have very, very human and just very nuanced speech, text-to-speech generation. Now, I'm not going to do it live here, not least of which because I've run out of credits for this month. But just to give you a sense, these are things that I've kind of run through here. And so you saw how I was chatting with the AI. I'd ask it a number of questions, lead it down to kind of discuss the things I wanted it to discuss. And then I would find about 30 seconds worth of answers. Sometimes I would flip around some of the sentences a little bit for, dramatic effect, but I would make sure not to change the text more than about kind of 5% just to smooth things over a little bit. And then you would feed that text into this platform, 11 Labs, and it gives you some pretty amazing results. If I press play, if it wants to press play. Anyway, you will hear the results. So 11 Labs is the one that is generating the audio that you hear in the video. And it's very natural. It has a lot of nuance to it. And importantly, with 11 Labs, once you've found a voice that you like, you can then feed audio back into it to ensure that there's a consistency with the tone and the nature of the voice when you in future try and generate things again. So I think that's important about 11 Labs is you can kind of feed back in the audio into itself in order to get that consistency. Now you'll see here that, in the space of, I had to run one query kind of 4 times in order to get it to kind of say, sound as natural as possible and to have enough pausing and intonation in the right spaces so that it felt as believable as possible. You do have to iterate these things. It's just the nature of the game at the moment. And so you find yourself kind of churning through credits, quite frankly, in order to get the right thing. But what will distinguish a good piece of AI-generated content from an average one is those people who take the time to make sure that they get something that's very balanced and that is really capturing what they wanted to do. So you've got the text, you've turned that text into audio, you've got an image, and then there are platforms like DID, and there are various other kind of character animation platforms. But again, this is one of the better and more accessible ones, at least, that can kind of help put this stuff together. And this is where it can get a bit tricky. So you've seen, for example, you saw this video here, I won't play it again, and that was a good example. But if we look down here, you'll see, oh, hold on, I ran it with a number of different versions that Midjourney was feeding me of Chimera as a portrait. And you might think, well, hold on, this one here looks great. This is an amazing, this one looks fantastic. But when you play it,
Wait, I don't think we're hearing the audio this time, actually.
okay, it doesn't matter if you don't hear the audio. If you could see the video there is really what you want to get a sense of. And in fact, it's probably better if you don't, because then I can run through it a little bit. So I can show you how there's some distortion. You can see how her head is moving, her chin kind of becomes distorted. All of these things are things that when people watch something will suddenly make them think, oh, hold on, that doesn't really work for you. And similar here, you can kind of, it's starting to get a bit better, but you can see again how the lips here are off, the chin's off, all of these things again start to make it fall into that kind of uncanny valley, as it's called, where you just don't really believe it. And it looks like someone's whacked her on the jaw, unfortunately. And then also, if you have a look at the top of the crown here, you can see how it's not quite capturing the entirety of the head. And so there's some artifacting going on. It's having a bit of difficulty kind of realizing where the boundaries of this image are. And all of that is stuff that you need to smooth out. And this is why having the best results with something like DID will be very front-on, perpendicular imagery, because that is how it's trained to animate things. That is how it really is able to give you the best possible results. And when I talk about iteration, I do really mean it. So you might think, well, what's the difference between this and the one we ended up with? But you can see they are slightly different images. And although the images here are so subtle, the differences, when I put one of these images into DID, you'll see that suddenly, for whatever reason, it doesn't know how to do eye contact, right? So you end up with some quite, almost ridiculous results that just look completely alien and not realistic whatsoever. So this kind of iteration is incredibly important until you really finally kind of come in and you find has all the pieces you need, the head is moving effectively, all of the eye contact is being made. There's very few kind of moments where it is making unnatural movements with its mouth or anything else. You can still see a little bit of artifacting. Now, from this moment, of course, we can be very happy with this. This is a fantastic result. It's believable, it's compelling. You feel like you're actually watching a video of a character talking to you. But you kind of have to take it a little bit further because, again, it's kind of the novelty of it wears off pretty quick. And one of the ways that I started doing that was to swap out things like the backgrounds. And so, again, keeping the same image here, because I think it's important when you find something that works to kind of keep that image. And you can see this is a take that didn't quite work 100%. And then flipping out the background. And of course, with Photoshop these days, you can isolate the image from the background pretty effectively, and you can find a way to really use it so that you've got an image that you can then put on top of various different kinds of backgrounds. And as we've seen, if anybody goes to the videos that I've made, and this is a bit of a preview of what's coming up, I guess, but there are different kind of backgrounds that are involved. And this is a kind of subsequent
fellow wanderers.
This is a subsequent one where you can see what I've done here is I've cleaned up around her head in order for that that video generation to get as clear a shot of her head as possible so that there's no artifacting, there's no kind of smearing of things. And then I've changed the background as well in order to kind of be able to give a bit of visual diversity in between videos that I put out in order to keep people interested. And again, if you listen to this one, the script has changed. And again, the script here has been AI generated as before. So the process is the same, but it's being tweaked, it's being honed, and then there's variation being put into it to keep it interesting.
Greetings, fellow wanderers. My name is Kai Mia, and I come from a distant world, one that is suffering from the same problems you are facing on Earth. I have come to share my knowledge and experiences so that we may all learn from each other and create a better tomorrow. It is my hope that everyone will take up the challenge and make a difference. Every voice counts, and every action matters. A change is possible if we all come together with a shared vision. It begins with each of us, and together we can make a real impact. Fellow one.
So you can see how this character starts to develop. Now, things like I come from a distant world and things like that, that's when in something like InWorld, when you're giving it a prompt for what this character is for and who it is, you're saying this is a character from another planet who's here to talk to people. So it's you are kind of feeding it certain information in order to create a consistent character. That's what creates the illusion of personality, shall we say. But the actual content there is also, as we've said, being AI generated from the imagery to the script, to the audio, the speech, to the animation. The background imagery is from Midjourney as well. I've kind of put those things together in Photoshop. Now, I could keep doing that, and I could keep changing the script, and I could keep changing the background, and that might be enough, to be honest. People's attention spans on Twitter these days are pretty short, and maybe I could get away with that for a couple of months. But I started to realize again that there's something here whereby the novelty of this starts to wear off quickly. And so that's where you have to start to think, well, what skills can I bring to this? Now, if you go onto Twitter and you look at the kinds of things people are doing who are actual artists, and I'm by no means an artist or a video editor of any note. These people are able to do incredible things. You know, I've seen recent imagery where they're essentially creating their own high-paced action anime footage, fully animated, incredible kind of results, and with basic kind of cinematography, videography, editing, and things like that they're able to put together into these platforms in a very incredible way. So for those of you out there who do have artistic talent, you're probably already on top of this because you realize how much it can exponentially multiply what you can do, and in a short amount of time. But this is also for us to say, well, what can the average person do? And I pretty much am the average person, you know, and I've picked up a few video editing skills along the way and technical skills, but all of these things are relatively simple. They just require patience and a bit of an eye for detail, which I think is one of the things that I'm hoping I'm showing you along the way, how it is a bit of a fine line sometimes between a result that looks very impressive and is very immersive and a result that looks like you've thrown something into an Instagram filter, right? So there is a fine line, but that fine line is pretty easy to navigate. Now, again, as I was saying, and just kind of in closing, I thought, well, hold on, this is going to have a bit of, the novelty on this is going to wear off as well. And so, look, when you see video editing and you think, well, how did they do all those effects and those transitions? And I don't know how to use After Effects, and I don't know how to use this and that and do special effects on video. One of the industry secrets is that the vast majority of that stuff is based off of templates, right? As are the vast majority of websites you see. They're based off of various kinds of templates that are then utilized. And so for any style you can imagine, there are video editing templates for Adobe Premiere or After Effects if you're a bit more advanced that you can kind of quickly grab and use to help you create more interesting video edits. And so this is where I was starting to think, well, if this character has arrived, how can I make it a bit more compelling as a kind of a transmission? This is a transmission that's coming through that would have all kinds of like static and glitch effects and all these kinds of things. And then how can we direct people to an action? And that action in Twitter, of course, is to use a hashtag. And in the case of our planet and in the case of Chimera, that hashtag is hashtag Web3 for good. And so by going to some of these template sites and just looking for all freely available glitch effects templates, logo kind of glitch, title screen templates, things like that, I was able to put this AI generated video onto an Adobe Premiere timeline. I won't open up Premiere because it might have some issues with streaming. But I was able to put that into Adobe Premiere, use some of these effect templates, and pepper them around, and then we can kind of take it again to another level where, so you've just seen that, and then if I add the various kind of template glitch effects on top of it, we end up with something that starts to feel much more cohesive as a piece of multimedia.
Greetings, fellow wanderers. My name is Chimera, and I come from a distant world, one that is suffering from the same problems you are facing on Earth. I have come to share my knowledge and experiences so that we may all learn from each other and create a better tomorrow. It is my hope that everyone will take up the challenge and make a difference. Every voice counts, and every action matters. A change is possible if we all come together with a shared vision. It begins with each of us, and together we can make a real impact.
So all of that to just really show you how we can go from having our token, having our planet token, and obviously this is the cropped version, we can put that into Midjourney to create various kinds of front-facing depictions of this, or we can just storyboard things. You can do this in all kinds of interesting ways. We can then kind of work with an AI character training platform or generation platform to create scripts. Those can go into audio generation. That can then be placed into an animation. And all of this can be done in the space of a few hours. Now, maybe I spent 15 to 20 hours learning how to do all of this stuff, but once you know what you're doing, the process is relatively streamlined, and then it's an issue of kind of iteration until you get with where you're happy with. And then by utilizing the power of something like Adobe Premiere or After Effects, you can then, the world is your oyster, and how far can you take it is really up to how much you're willing to learn. But what I would say with that kind of thing is don't be intimidated necessarily, because so much of, like what you saw there, are all free templates that I downloaded, throw onto a timeline, and kind of line up some glitch audio with some glitch effects, and it's doing the heavy lifting as far as the actual effect is concerned. And it's just in the way you kind of curate it and direct it all together. So that's the kind of process, really. I hope it makes sense. How we got from one thing to the end through various kinds of steps. It can feel very intimidating, but at the same time, each step is quite simple. You're putting in an input, you're iterating until you get the output you like, and then you're fine-tuning things. And, you need some, maybe some image editing skills and other things to make sure you can change things like backgrounds and other things like that. But those aren't difficult to learn. And ultimately, even without something like Photoshop, there are free versions of both photo and video editing software that can do similar things. So all of these kinds of tools are available. They're all there to bring your wanderers to life and your tokens to life. And they really enable you to, for the first time, see this as an entry point into a world of creative expression, into your imagination, and where these kind of new visions of the future emerge from, which is from our imaginations, and then they become reality. And I think it's really important and really exciting to be able to enter into those spaces in a way that I never imagined I would be able to do. I'm a writer, so I enter into those spaces with my words, but I never thought I would be able to do this visually. I never thought I would be able to do this with that kind of level of artistic ability and depth. And suddenly these platforms allow us to do that. And so just in closing, I would say, get used to these things, start playing around with them. What is available now, in a year from now or 2 years from now, is going to be only easier to use, more accessible. But the earlier we get to grips with it, the quicker we're able to really learn where the nuances are, where the kind of uncanny valley pitfalls are that we have to avoid, so that we can start getting ultimately what are just above average results. And if you get above average results with these kinds of platforms, particularly right now, they're kind of mind blowing, really, because these things are so new. So I'd recommend everybody to give it a go. And obviously on the Discord, I'm around and happy to answer anyone's questions. And maybe we'll do some more kind of hands-on sessions in the Discord chat and other things where we can really fine tune things and troubleshoot, because I just think it's a really great and inspiring thing to do. So I hope that makes sense, Baines and Chelsea. I hope that's kind of what people might have been interested in. Let me just stop sharing here.
That was perfect. I was just giggling to myself because Vani and I were both leaning in and looking adoringly at everything that you've created. What an awesome overview and journey to create Kamiya in a way that's so natural and humanistic. And I didn't realize all of the iterations that went into producing her. So thank you for sharing. And like, the output is just incredible. Like I said, I feel like AI turns everyone into a creator, and I'm so excited by what you're creating and what you'll inspire other people to create too. So thank you. Thank you.
No, you're very welcome. And we've already had a
What a
few
treat.
people kind of discuss on the Discord, well, what would it look like if I made a character and it started interacting with Kamiya, and maybe it was resistant to
Yeah,
what Kamiya wanted to do. And so we can start having this emergent storytelling where
I
we're
love it.
bouncing off of one another. I think exactly, Ashley, we need I think some people might see Kamiya as the villain. I don't know, but and another person suggested maybe she slowly starts going a bit mad. But those kinds of things,
Good.
you can kind of start playing around with this, and the more of us that get involved and start bouncing off of one another, the more these things start to organically take form. And so I'm all up for it. If anybody wants to tag Chimera in something, as a response, and feel free. But then it
Yes.
just opens up that whole landscape of storytelling that we can really get to grips with one another. So.
And that was our whole vision, is co-creating this together and allowing and empowering the community to be able to develop their own characters if they want to. And I mean, BAYC, I think, has done this really well from a commercialization perspective, giving them personalities and personalizing them, whether it's through a um, coffee subscription or a burger store, or insert example XYZ. I think we can dream a little bigger there. But we A, love to see it, and B, want to help empower it to the best of our ability. So we're so grateful to you. I come from the creative media, advertising, brand development, etc. space, and in the entertainment space, they're saying you have to see it to be it. That's why films like Frozen, with two little girls as the heroines, kind of broke the entertainment internet when it first came out. And so I'm all with you, FutureSightE, in terms of helping people imagine an optimistic utopia, and of course having there will be villains in the story that we tell together. But I think in order for us to actually execute on that optimistic utopia, people have to be able to imagine it and see themselves within that utopia. And so thank you for taking steps towards creating that for our community and together. And again, let us know how we can help support you in developing Chimera and making sure that everyone meets her in our planet and beyond.
No, thank you very much. I think it's just great to start getting these things out there. Importantly, with Web3, I think everybody's getting a bit bored of the same old engagement traps on Web3 Twitter. And this is just a way for us to actually talk about things that matter in an engaging new technology Web3 kind of way, that is really at the forefront of technology and innovation, but just does it in a way where we're really kind of entertaining one another, getting to know one another and what makes us tick, getting to know the purpose of why we're here beyond just kind of flipping things and making money. There's a bigger picture here, and there's more at stake than the balance of our ETH wallets. And I think we need to start recognizing that. And as we were kind of discussing at the beginning, it's really important to start grappling with this stuff, because it's not something that's going to be happening in 2041. It's something that's happening now. If you wait till 2040 to start trying to get to grips with this, you're going to be left far behind.
Too late.
And maybe that some people want to be, but for those of us who want to be engaged and want to see how we can use this creatively, professionally, productively, even as a way to teach ourselves things, I just think now's the time, because these things are going to only accelerate in their release over the next 2 to 3 years.
Agreed. FutureSightE, I'm sending you AI 2041. We'll get your
Thank
skills
you very
later.
much.
There's a really good chapter on education specifically that's been quite inspiring to me personally, and hearing you think and talk about education as well, I feel like you'd find it really fascinating. So we'll make sure.
No, thank you very much. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Of course. Yeah.
Well, thank you both really for sharing your insights and takes. And I think there's some things I want to that I took away. Well, one, when I've spoken to artists that draw, they've always said that the hands are also a very challenging thing to draw. So it's interesting that AI also struggles with that. And then the iterating process, I think that for those that have tried to work with Photoshop or Illustrator or a video editor or Adobe, that there's a lot of iteration too that you do, and you start from zero, and those skills take years to develop. So I find this to be, it takes time, a little bit of, effort, but you ultimately are like time traveling and learning how to gain these skills. And like you say, Chelsea, you're like a superpower that anybody can really do, and you don't have to go to film school or animation school to be able to bring your characters to life. So I found that really interesting.
I think there will always be a level of human creativity and artistry that will continue to bring the art and culture world forward, and having AI to just help expedite that in
Yeah.
in some regards, and really as a partner rather than a competitor, is how I like to think about it.
Mm, I like this. Oh, a lot of nuggets were shared. I think what we'll do is list out all the resources in a tweet that FutureSight has used and in our Discord. But thank you all for tuning in. We love hearing from you, especially on socials. So keep tagging us, commenting on Twitter, and we have many more things coming along. So just message us, comment, and we always appreciate everyone from our community for being here and supporting us.
Beautifully said. Thank you, Future Sights.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Bonnie.